All right, good morning. We're here to talk a little bit about a pre-trip before we go out and do the task of mowing. One thing I'd like to tell you, if your supervisor tells you that you're going to mow today as you're walking out to mow, just take a second and focus on the task of the actual mower and the mowing operation. So as we go and approach the tractor, mowing is an inherently dusty, dirty job. The tractor, the equipment eats a lot of dirt, dust, and chaff. So one of the things that's important, in addition to pre-tripping all of the major components, the one thing I want you to remember is tractors eat a lot of dirt. And so this particular tractor has pre-screens that you can clean. You just take them out, knock the dust off. This one is dirty, left for training purposes. There is other pre-cleaning screens that you would take out and check. This tractor has a sensory system on it that will tell you, it'll beep when it is becoming restricted, that it's not getting enough airflow or is overheating. Then you have to just idle it down, shut it off, and then clean the screen. So, and all tractors are different. This also is very important to keep your air cleaner clean and check the pinch point where you can let the dust out. It's important to check all your fluid levels. I'm not going to talk a lot about that. That's covered in every pre-trip on the planet. Having said that, it's important to check your radiator, your oil levels. As we go around, you can't see this particularly, but the components of the tie rod ends and stuff, they need to be tight. You need to check them. Walking back to the back of the tractor, overall appearance, this is a brand new tractor, but your lug nuts don't have the telltale signs of streaks of rust or anything, knowing that it's tight. Now you can't tell where that's tight with your finger, but it's an obvious thing. You know, if it looks loose, then you better get something to check it. You would want to also check as you walk, just for if there's a puddle of antifreeze or oil, you know you have a problem, just like you do with your car at home. And tell your supervisor when you have those problems so that he can get the mechanic coming, or you guys can take care of it at the shed level. We walk back here to the hitch and pinch points. As we get to this pinch point area where we hook the implement up, the things you want to check, chances are you may or may not ever have to hook a mower up. It comes from the shop that way. If you break down, you will be unhooking it. When you do, when you hook these hydraulic lines up, make sure they're in tight. They have an O-ring system on them, and they will leak a little over the years. If they become more than just a periodic drip, they need to be changed. As you make sure when you're hooking up your PTO, it has a snap ring on it, an adjustment right there. Make sure that clicks shut, because if you're in transport mode and that comes unhooked, it'll catapult that drive line and you'll be broke down. This is owned by UDOT. We leased the tractor. They built these rock screens because we were continually breaking out back windows. Mowers throw a lot of rocks. This is what protects ultimately the back window and you as an operator inside. So make sure that's in place. Let's talk a little bit. You got your safety chains and your drawbar pins here. They need to be in. That has to have a lock nut on it. Make sure that's in place. Let's talk a little bit now about the maintenance side. Specifically, I know this is redundant, greasing is very important. These little circles here are grease point access. There's usually a zerk somewhere on the drive line. You'll have to roll that around. If you get to a zerk and you can't get it, don't not grease it. Take the time to get either a knife or something and carve that a little bit, because sometimes they're not exactly where they need to be. Make it so you can grease it. Because if you just don't grease it because it's hard to get to, sooner or later that component will fail. So it needs to be greased. That includes all these driveline areas. You can take this screen off, for example. You can grease this without removing these, but this particular mower, you can slide that shield back out of place to get into your slip clutches and your U-joints and all these this gearbox. You can check this breather, make sure it's in place. We'll just leave that, we'll slide that back and not do it up for today's purposes. Another thing you need to make sure of before you start mowing, so we talked a little bit about greasing, and we'll continue that when we get to the back of the mower. When we talk about these safety chains, they're there to protect the traveling public and you. Anybody that's jogging or a home that you're going by, if those are not in place, it's going to allow debris, rocks, pieces of rubber, anything that's on the road that can and will fly, and even then they don't stop at all. If this whole guard is missing, or this guard is missing, make sure you tell your supervisor. If there's just a link or two missing, he'll probably tell you to mow. But if there's a whole section, you need to shut it down and get it replaced. Let's talk, this batwing mower is pinned up for today's purposes, so you're in a safe zone, and we'll talk about where that needs to be pinned. What I want to show you is a little bit about these blades and where this gearbox shaft comes through. These blades, as you can see by this big ding in this blade, is probably caused by a piece of steel that was on the roadway or a rock. These blades are almost new, if you can believe that or not, and they're not necessarily dull as you think of a knife blade, but they could be touched up with a hand grinder. So just as you start your season, make sure those are sharp like your lawnmower, so you're not tearing the grass, you're actually cutting the grass. The other thing that is inherent with mowing is any piece of string, wire, rope that's on the roadway, it's going to wind up right in here. It's either going to be wound around these blades or wound around this shaft behind here. Now underneath this shaft there's a bearing and a seal, and wire or twine will take that seal out and you'll begin to lose the oil out of your gearbox. So it's important when you do your check to get all that off of that shaft. Still checking your safety chains as you move around. These are skid plates to protect the sides of the mower. They're designed to ride on the ground. When they wear out, they need to be replaced so you're not actually in the integrity of the steel of the mower, excuse me. If it is not leveled correctly, they will sit there and run on the road and wear out in just a few miles. Like one day you could have that wore clear through. All right, as we move to the back of the mower, we talked about the gearbox a little bit and about the shaft that runs through. That's what I'm talking about. They also have a breather on them. Excuse me. This little breather right here. Make sure that those are loose. They should be able to allow breathe, otherwise it'll build pressure in that gearbox. This has ram stops on it right here, and they're used for adjustment purposes. UDOT typically mows grass down to 6 inches, and if it's higher, greater than 14 inches. If it's less than 14 inches, we typically may or may not decide to mow. But it's important to make sure the mowing is at the proper cutting height, and it's up to the operator when they get this at the shed to make sure that, and the shop does a good job, but it needs to be correct. And if it's on the wrong pitch, if you're low in the front and high in the back, it'll throw debris out the back. So make sure you level the mower when you're getting it to the correct height that's also level. Also side to side. There's adjustment points right here that adjust these axles, which will raise the wings up or down, besides the setting on the rams. Make sure all of your lights, this mower is equipped with lights, most are not. I think in the future they'll all have lights on them, but same thing, you have your safety chain guards in place. They're all the way around the mower, 360 degrees. Make sure you maintain and grease all the bearings on these spindles, on these tires. There's grease strokes on each one of them. This particular mower has dust cap protectors on it. This one's in place. This one has been hit by something. That needs to be pushed back around and that lug nut tightened. We left that loose so you can see what may or may not fail. Not a serious issue. Nonetheless, it isn't going to fix itself. Keep your mower deck clean. We've decided to have a cordless leaf blower. We can blow the chaff off this deck daily, and we maintain and grease it daily. That means whether it's been mowing for 2 hours or 10 hours, the next day it's greased again. So as you pin this mower up, this batwing is designed to fold up, and when it's clear up as that one is, this pin goes in here and it locks that in. That's used for transport mode. When you're in transport mode, if you pull off the right-of-way, off the roadway onto the slope of the right-of-way, if it's a very steep slope, this is very top-heavy with it pinned up. These mowers will tip over. We've tipped them over. I know other sheds have tipped them over. So make sure you lower the center of the gravity, maybe let your wings down before you get off, at least the uphill side wing. I think that covers the basic pre-trip and the concept of the pre-trip, which is maintaining the mower and making sure all the safety features are in place. I want to talk a little bit about the pinch point here, and when you turn too sharp, you can turn around and actually jackknife this mower to where your back tire will be rubbing on this hitch. It starts to wear out the tire, it'll tear them cleats off, and I've seen them grab a hold and pull this implement, the mower, right up on top of the tractor with you. So make sure when you're turning, backing up or going forward, and you're turning sharp, you're watching this area right here, that you're not rubbing and jackknifing your mower. All right, one thing that we need to talk about a little bit is the exhaust components. Make sure you don't have big exhaust leaks. And as you go around the overall tractor, if there is something that you're not grasping the concept of, you need to look in the owner's manual and find out what the exact specifications, because UDOT may or may not rent a tractor this model and size in the future. So every year you may have to refer to the owner's manual for the specific piece of equipment that you're running.